Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today I wanted to talk about two of the most underrated Scarlet and Violet era sets in Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces. Now, both these sets I've been talking about the illustration rares and illustration rare tier list videos. Well, Temporal Forces one isn't out yet. Just as a bit of a spoiler, both these sets have an incredible array of illustration rares. Now, these were sets that also are getting pretty old at this point in regards to the Scarlet and Violet era. Yet when you look at the prices of a lot of their boxes, they seem kinda undervalued and very much an underrated potential play. And so I wanted to look in this video, compare these prices of the boxes like the booster bundles, PCTBs, and booster boxes to some other Scarlet and Violet era sets, as well as mention the release date and how important that is. So without further ado, let's get started by looking at some of the top chase cards from these sets, starting with Paradox Rift. Now, Paradox Rift, of course, is one of those that is kind of to a lesser extent. You see the Groudon bit to your left right there, not fully in screen, but the Groudon is a $80 card. We all know about this Groudon. It's one that's been changing a ton over the course of time. We just click on this one and look at it. You see that this is a card that obviously was higher, tanked a little bit, but it's always been a somewhat valuable card. Then you have a bunch of other really solid cards. As I talked about in my Paradox Rift tier list video, the Garchomp is an insanely underappreciated and beautiful card, and one I think in the future is going to get a lot of love once people, get that nostalgia for terrestrialization. They're going to look back at cards like the Charizard from Obsidian Flames, like the Garchomp from Paradox Rift, and see this is a card that in no way, shape, or form should be a $30 card. The Altaria with the Swablu, this is one of the most beautiful dual artworks ever. Having the little Swablu be part of these Wingles and be the first one to evolve. Beautiful card. The Roaring Moon, another just great card, and so is the Iron Valiant. Both those cards being a lot like the Pikachu we saw in 151, where it's this sort of collective illustration where you're showing all these other Paradox Pokemon with either the future or ancient ones. Plus and beautiful ones. Then even some of these more underappreciated, lower priced ones. Again, there's the Great Swablu on the bottom right there. The Vanillish is an insanely good looking card. The Yveltal is one that I'm very shocked has been as low as it is. Just a really overall solid array. And even when you go to the sub $10 cards that are out there right now, the Brute Bonnet, insanely beautiful card. A lot of great artwork by him. And this is another card that really shouldn't be the price it is. Then, of course, you have other just solid ones, the Porygon Z, the Garbodor. There's a lot of really good cards in this set. And then, of course, we have Temporal Forces. Now, Temporal Forces is another set that really doesn't get a lot of love, and I don't fully get it. When this set initially came out, it did get a lot more love than Paradox Rift, because we did see this Iron Crowns card actually be worth a pretty high amount back in the day. Actually, this was like a $77 card, and I believe at one point I think it was technically the most valuable card, because I think before this was a bit more. But it's a card that's been continuing to go down, which is pretty shocking. And when you look at this overall, I mean, you have a regular illustration rare in this set being worth almost $60. I don't think the vast amount of Pokemon and Scarlet and Violet collectors, investors, whatever, even realize this set has a 50+ regular illustration rare in it. Now, as I will mention in the Temporal Force video when that comes out, I do think this Ghastly is not deserving of being the most expensive illustration rare, but it still is. The Raging Bolt, $70 card. The Walking Wake, really good looking card, and so is the Gouging Fire, an insanely beautiful SIR, the Iron Leaves. You have this great combo, the Sawsbuck and Deerling, that just look beautiful next to each other. That's an insanely good one, and you can get both those cards for less than $50. The Eerie, I think, is one of the best looking trainer cards of all time, maybe even the best. And you have a bunch of other ones, Iron Boulder, Litten, Metagross, some other ones. The Arbok is a super sick card. Even in terms of the game, Neo Upper Energy is a pretty common card in Dragapult deck, so if you're a player, you obviously know about that. And then you have some of these other cards here. The Chatot is a really cool card when you consider the fact that it's, based on a musical note, or not musical note, but, musical staff and all that. Really cool looking card there. Some other nice ones here. Again, the Minccino. So you have two sets that are just purely underappreciated in terms of the actual cards in them, which already gives you a good argument to be made that these boxes are probably a bit underappreciated. These sets, in terms of pure illustration rare quality, not price, these are two of the best sets, period. I mean, I mentioned in my Paradox Rift video that set is arguably the best set in the entire era when it comes to just pure illustration rare quality. But because none of these sets have a true mega chase card, like a Greninja, like a Bubble Mew, they don't get a ton of love. But let's look into some of the boxes. Now we're going to look at Paradox Rift's booster bundle. Now, booster bundles have obviously become that sort of fourth best investment kind of product, I would say is what most people would agree on, right? You have your PC ETB, then your booster box, I will die on that hill. Then you have your regular ETB, then you have this kind of overtaken the 3-pack blister. Now, when you look at the Paradox Rift booster bundle, obviously you get 6 booster packs, so it's a sixth of the booster box. This one's actually gone down. You saw like a bit of a buyout and then it went down, which you never see. But when you look at the overall price graph for a year, and that's what we're going to be looking at for all these boxes that we're looking at. 1 year goes $24. So you can get this for $24. That is $4 a pack. That is under MSRP, right? Then we saw it go up and up and up. And you look at this. This is a pretty steady graph. It took a little bit, but once it started going up, it went pretty linear. This wasn't one that had a massive spike. And even when you're seeing these high quantities being sold, you're not seeing it lead to a massive spike. The closest was this one that we saw in February, where it went from, $30 to $40. But even that's not insane. And we've been seeing this sort of anti-buyout in a lot of ways where it's just going down. And even at $40, this is still year to year a pretty hefty growth. As you can see there, 70% growth. And at its max was over 100%. Now, Temporal Forces is another one we're going to look at. Now, even in just the last 3 months, it's been a very linear growth. It's been the opposite, actually. It's gone from that $40 price that Paradox Rift is at, and it's gone up to $50. Now, when you look at the year graph, this is a beautiful graph. When you're talking about actually wanting to invest in Pokemon, this is the graph you want to see. You don't want to see one of these that has all these massive spikes, massive dips. You once again only have one real dip, and that's right around here in June, where even then it only went down by $7. When you look at it, again, sub MSRP, sub $4 a pack, $22, and just kept rising, and was a pretty steep riser at that, to where we are now at a 115% increase year to year. These booster bundles have been plays that not a lot of people were fully behind. One of my bigger regrets, I'm not fully regretful, as I did have a decent amount of Obsidian Flames booster bundles, and when I got out of those, was before it really spiked up, but hey, that's for another video in the future. I can talk about why I did that, because there was a reason for it. But in terms of this one, though, this is a really nice graph. And now let's compare that to 2 other booster bundles. This is base set Scarlet and Violet. Now, base set Scarlet and Violet and Paldea Evolved, I'll talk about more in depth later on in the video about how important the release dates are. But these boxes are currently $60. And these are another one of those sets that really doesn't have a true chase card. Even the Gardevoir in the set is not worth that much. And the Miriam, which used to be the chase card, also was never worth that much. So this set is just a worse version than Temporal Forces or Paradox Rift. It still is great for a base set, as we've talked about in past videos, that base sets usually don't have anything special going on, or they only have a little bit, but this one had illustration mirrors and all that. But even with that, this is just a worse set than Temporal Forces or Paradox Rift, yet its box is actually worth more at $60. And that means that because, once again, sub $24, it's a 150% increase. Now, this did have a pretty steep growth early in the year, January to March, where it went all the way from a $25 to a $50, 100% increase in just a couple months. Dipped a little bit, but then you had this huge 41 items sold, and it's just been going up since. $60 for this? Again, this is, objectively speaking, a worse set than the previous 2. The previous 2 have many great cards, whereas base set Scarlet and Violet has the incredible Gardevoir line and a couple other really solid cards. Then Surging Sparks. This one hasn't been out for a year yet, but this is, of course, a big one to know, or it has actually been out for about a year. It's only a $4 market value. You would think it's more, but the reason is, right, it came out. This was when we really started to see the boom of Pokemon products. Man, I can't believe that's already a year old. But then you had this stuff, booming, and this was the set that really, really caused it even more than 151. And then it jumped and spiked to 47. And it's been the same way since. You know why? Because you can still find this in stores. Just about 2 weeks ago, I walked into a GameStop and they had these boxes. Now, yes, they were doing the GameStop thing where they're charging over MSRP, but they were charging, I think it was $40. And so what's important to note about that, you can still find these packs. I've seen single packs in Walmart, again, about 3 weeks ago. So this is a set that is still out there, which is why it has stayed true at this $40 range. And this is why that, let's put yourself 6 months ago. there were people actually suggesting, hey, if you're going to buy either, let's say, Surging Sparks or Temporal Forces, you should buy Surging Sparks. And in certain aspects of the booster box, maybe, but in terms of booster bundles, that was a terrible idea because, again, this product was still going to be this price. And again, if you date back to, let's call it where it's fair, November 18th to 24th, because that's the low we've seen here. Since November of last year till now, it's been roughly the exact same price. There's been some dips, there's been some rises. It's been about the same price. Again, compare that to Temporal Forces. Compare that to Paradox Rift. It's no comparison. Those were just better plays. Now the PCETBs. Now, this is a very important thing to remember. These two that I'm showing for Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces are the more expensive of the two. There were two PCETBs for both these sets. These are the only two sets that did this. No White Flare and Black Bolt don't count. Those are two different sets. They just came out at the same time. These two sets are the only ones that had two different PCETBs. Depending on how you view the print counts, odds are that means that each one is probably rarer than, the single PCETBs for other sets. So important to remember that. Let's look at Paradox Rift's Roaring Moon one. The Roaring Moon one is one that is up to 185. Now, if you know anything about PCETBs and Pokemon investing within the last month, you know that some of these have been being clearly bought out. Shrouded Fable, Journey Together both spiked almost 50% increase within about 6 days. To being from Shrouded Fable was easily under $100 to now being like 140, 150, and Journey Together was about like 110 to about like 150 now, 160. Now, this one clearly doesn't have that to the same degree, and there have been a lot here. I think a lot of people are starting to really buy up all the sub $200 PCETBs they can. Look at the year-to-year graph. 1 year ago, $60. Again, Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces were sets that came out when you could easily get product for MSRP or less than MSRP. Well, you'll see when we get to the booster boxes. These were $100 booster boxes, meaning that these were also $60 PCETBs. You could have got this for months. Look at this. You're not talking about like a few days. You're talking about from mid-September, and this is just as far back as the graph goes. Mid-September to November, they were $60. Rose a little bit, stayed stagnant, moved a little bit more or a lot more, went down a bit, and now they've gone up. Year to year, 210% increase, $187 market value now. Insane, but it's not shocking. PCTBs have been clearly one of those things that a lot of people have viewed as a clear play. And again, once you're seeing more and more be bought, ripped, and all that, you're seeing less and less be sold. As you look at, the March till now versus beforehand, the amount sold is nowhere near. Now, Temporal Forces, this is the Walking Wake. This one is worth more than the Iron Leaves one. Now, when you look at this one did have a bit of a buyout spike where you had 18 sold, and the price spiked from, was it 165 all the way to 206 within just a couple days. But year graph, again, this one was 70. It was a bit higher, but it was a $70 price tag, and you could have had that for months. Then it rose really high to 220, went down some, went down all the way to 160. So if you bought it here, it was rough, but if you just waited a few months, you're back to it being 226. So you actually are at your peak. This is technically your peak looking at this, thanks to the little buyout. So this is not a great looking graph. Like I said, this is not a good looking graph, having a massive dip and then a massive spike here. But this is still one that makes sense that it is going up. Again, Temporal Forces was a better set than Paradox Rift to a lot of people. And while I personally prefer the illustration rare in Paradox Rift more so than Temporal Forces, mainly because I think that the SIRs are very underappreciated in Paradox Rift, as I said before, I think this set is still a criminally underappreciated set for how good the illustration rares are. Now let's compare that to one PCTB that came out before this and one after, Obsidian Flames. Look, I could have cheated and put 151 here, but as I'll say to if other people want to try and do it, comparing a specialty set to a regular set for like PCTBs and booster bundles is such a just incorrect thing to do, because when you're talking about a specialty set, your best investment is the PCTB by a mile. There are no booster boxes, which means that for a pure pack value, the booster bundle is your best box to get. You know what I mean? Like if you're buying a product just for the packs, the booster bundle is the best, and then your overall, it's the ETBs. So you can't compare them, because the PCTB for 151 is just stupidly overvalued at like $1,000, but I guess it is what it is. Obsidian Flames. This is one that's been going up a lot recently. The market value is now $565, with some recent sales being over $700, so this is going to keep going up. Why? The Charmander in this is worth so much money in a 10. I believe I talked about in a previous year, it's like over $1,000 in a 10. And Obsidian Flame is one of those sets that, again, is basically out of print now. And we're seeing a lot of stuff go up again. The booster bundles are now over $50 each. Year Graph. This is one that even a year ago you still could have got for under $100. And this is one that was actually PCTB that was hard to get initially. Because it was Charmander, because of the Charizard set. This was before the Charizard hype kind of died down for a bit. This is one that was a bit harder to get, but even then, still a sub-$100 PCTB. Then it kept rising, and it was rising steadily but fast to get all the way to 340, dipped a teeny bit, and now it's spiking to being 565 and going to keep going up. It's wild. Now look, if you're gonna say is a better investment right now to spend $700 on a Obsidian Flames PCTV versus, well, before the buyouts I would have said about 7 Shrouded Fable PCTVs, but for the price of this you can get like 3 different sets up to 4 depending on what you want to get other PCTVs. Is this a better play than those? I don't know, but in terms of this value, right? These first PCTVs were ones that I think everybody knows weren't printed as much as future ones. Because these were still new, because these were the ones that obviously had the special promo in them with the stamp on it. But this is still an insane one to see when you see this graph. And so when you look at it, this is a lot of money for a set that a lot of people don't really like. Look, Obsidian Flames, the Charizard is a beautiful card. I think the Charizard is still insanely undervalued and insanely underappreciated, even with its spike in value. With that being said, do I think Obsidian Flames is a better set than Paradox Rift? Absolutely not. Is it better than Temporal Forces? Absolutely not. Should its value be 560 compared to, like 180? No. So I do think this is, you've got some hope for Paradox Rift and all that, because again, those sets are newer than this, which we'll show later, and Stellar Crown. Stellar Crown is one of those sets that is definitely weaker, and I still stand by that it is a weaker one. This is one of those sets, let's actually pull this up real quick, because I wanted to look at this one, to talk about this a bit. This is a set that I do think is pretty overvalued. I think that when you look at some of these cards, like, it's not overvalued, but this set is just not incredible. The Squirtle, the Bulbasaur, and Terrapagos are like your big 3 cards. The Terrapagos was the big card. This is one that's actually like just gone down a ton. It just keeps going down and down. So this is not really a great set, and I do think it is worse than the other 2 sets. And it's currently 150 market value. This came out later than both of them, Temporal Forces and Paradox Rift, so even more of these boxes were printed. And this is a worse set. Yet it still also has grown, a decent amount of 50% increase. Now, it's worth less than Temporal Forces by a wide margin and less than Paradox by a decent margin, but this is a significantly worse set that is also newer by a pretty wide margin as well. Because, if I'm not mistaken, Twilight Masquerade came out before this, and then Stellar Crown came out. I mean, this is 2 sets newer, like pure normal sets, not counting any specialty sets, 2 sets newer than Temporal Forces, yet its PCETB is, close to Paradox. Most recent sale 185. Most recent sale of this was 150. Do with that what you will. So I don't know. I feel like the PCTBs are a tougher one, especially with how much the promo matters. So I do get that. But at least from what it seems like, the PCTBs seem to be the strongest ones. But then you get the booster boxes. Let's look at Paradox Rift. Paradox Rift is now, you can buy one for $260. Market value is $250, and that's basically what the most recent sales are. Year graph, $100. Could have gotten one of these for $100 without any problem. And again, look at this. This is beauty in a graph. Just almost a perfect straight line going all the way up to here. You do have this bit of a spike recently, but even then, it's not the worst spike we've seen. It is a spike for sure, but it's not one where it's a ton of product being sold, and we saw like one where you had 400 being sold recently, right? You're seeing like 20. This is actually in line, so there is no buyout happening here in terms of like volume being bought out. Just an overall increase of value for a product that is, let's just gonna say, not being printed that much, if at all. So, beautiful graph. Temporal Forces. Now, it's actually almost the exact same market value. In fact, it is literally $3 less, or $2.50. And again, this is an even more sexy graph. Just a pure straight line. This is almost a literal straight line when you look at this. That is a beautiful graph. There is no real manipulation here. There's no buyout stuff. There is no wonky, is it real BS. This is a straight up investable graph right here. And so you're seeing it continue to go up and up and up. $100 all the way to $250. So 135% increase, 140% increase. Now let's go to Destined Rivals. This is a new set. And look at this graph. This has been off less than 6 months. What is this? What am I looking at? This thing shot up before it even came out, 350. Hundreds being sold, tanked down to 250 and spiked back to 350. Spoiler, this set is going to continue being printed for another year. This is not a set that we're not going to see at all. It's going to be continue to be printed and printed and printed. We just had new tins come out, if I'm not mistaken, of Team Rocket. These booster boxes, you can bet your ass they're going to be reprinted. So the fact that this is $350, this is overvalued. There is no arguing this. This is absurd. You were talking about a set being worth this much? Like, come on now, look, this set has some beautiful cards, but are we going to sit here and say this is Evolving Skies level absurdity? No. This is a great card. This is a great card. This is a great card. Should these two be both worth over 100? Absolutely not. When you're seeing the 6th SIR being a $77 card, you look back at Surging Sparks. Let's go back to Surging Sparks real quick before we get here. Surging Sparks, when it came out, a bunch of these cards were worth more and more than they were. This was over $100. This was over 150. This was almost $100. This was $80. What happened? More and more product came out. The Alolan Executor went down in value. Let's look at this. Year graph. Look at that. It tanked. Then, of course, you have the Hydreigon. Now, this one didn't tank as... Well, it kind of did. Again, $80, $90 card, tanked to $40. We're going to see the same thing happen in Destined Rivals with some of these cards. This Crobat is not going to continue being an $80 card. This Nidoking is not going to continue being a $100 card. Moltres probably won't. These two should arguably hope. I think these two should, the Rocket's Mewtwo and the Cynthia's Garchomp. I think those should. But yeah, and then we also have these half booster boxes. I don't even know what these are. These just apparently just spawned in at one point. And so you have even more single pack products. Get out of here with these booster boxes. You go back to Temporal Forces, and you look at the most expensive stuff, you don't see no half booster boxes. So when you're seeing how many products are being printed for stuff like this booster box being worth what it is absurd. The fact that even the half booster box is $200, yeah, I would much rather buy a booster box of these ones than Paldea Evolved. This is the best one to compare. Paldea Evolved is a $430 booster box right now. Really solid graph again. Pretty linear. Even a year ago it was $140, but if you go back a few months before, this is a $100 booster box. In fact, this used to be an $80 booster box. Now up to $420. This is proof of the last point I want to make. The release dates. The release dates matter so much for these products and investing. A big thing that I learned directly was with the Sword and Shield era. I ended up getting some stuff and selling some stuff, and because of when I got it, it was at the very end of a lot of these print runs. For some reason, even though it's such a common thing to do, nobody really does it because of the fact that you do randomly have certain sets getting reprinted super late. Historically, 1.5 to 2.5 years after a set comes out. That's a big window. It's a full year window I'm giving you. But in that window, the set is going to stop being printed. You're not only going to not see new booster boxes come out, or new ETBs, you're just going to not see any packs out there. Scarlet and Violet Paldea Evolved are pretty much done. Paldea Evolved got a couple of smaller reprints. There were some restocks. I haven't really seen packs that often. Same with Scarlet and Violet. We might still get a couple at some point, but they're pretty much done out of print. Again, Paldea Evolved is over 2 years old now. They're not going to continue printing it. Paradox Rift is about to be 2 years old. We're just a couple of months away from it being a 2-year-old set. And Temporal Forces is also close. Not as close, but we're a few months away from that. Compare that to Surging Sparks and Destined Rivals. Surging Sparks is 8 months later or newer than Temporal Forces. Destined Rivals came out this year. These two sets, you're going to keep seeing them appear. They might get scalped, they might get bought, but what is guaranteed is they are going to be in stores for another year. Whereas Paradox Rift, whatever is out there, maybe there's 1 or 2 more boxes that have some. I'm looking up to the side because I think there might be that Team Rocket box, that UPC that's going to come out that I think has some Temporal Forces packs in it or something like that. But, I mean, that's about it. Let's see. Yeah, this set, it looks like it's going to have... Okay, so Paldea Evolved is still going to be in that set. And it looks like there's going to be some Temporal Forces. So we're getting 1 more box with Paldea Evolved stuff in it. Because, again, this set they really were reprinting. There's another thing. The sets that really get popular are the ones that get reprinted more. Darkness Ablaze got reprinted a ton. Surging Sparks got reprinted a ton. Fusion Strike didn't get reprinted as much as Silver Tempest. So that's why you obviously see Fusion Strike going as absurdly high as it is. We're going to see that with these Scarlet Violet sets of this era. Paradox Rift Temporal Forces are hitting that 2-year mark. We're not going to see any more of these products. These are products that are going to be positioned at an area where they could spike. I don't think they will, and I hope they don't. I hope it just continued solid growth. But compared to Surging Sparks, Destined Rivals, especially Destined Rivals, Destined Rivals is a set that I really do feel like has a good shot to crash. It's one that really feels like it's trying to be pumped up. Like, think about the sports card market for those of you who do sports cards. A lot of Kabooms are valued because they've been pumped. Older Kabooms, like pre-2019, same with Downtowns, are rare. Those are gorgeous, beautiful, deserve to be valuable. If anything, should be worth more. Post-2020, those Downtowns and Kabooms got easier and easier and easier to pull, and there was more and more and more product that was being opened, but it wasn't, or being made, but it wasn't at like, it was to the point where there was just, percentage-wise, there were more Kabooms and Downtowns. So when you're saying these modern Downtowns and Kabooms being worth over $500, they're not rare cards. Like, these are cards that used to be like, probably less than 300 were made. Now it's like there's probably more than 2,000 being made. Destined Rivals feels like a modern-day Kaboom. It feels like a modern-day Downtown. It's a set being absurdly pumped to be pumped. It has 2 deserving chase cards, and I think Ethan's Ho-Oh, I don't think it's as good as those other 2, and this is coming from a certified Gen 2 enjoyer, a certified Ethan, and, Ethan's Typhlosion player. I do not think that card should be worth over $100. I do think the Garchomp and the Giovanni's Mewtwo are both great cards. But do I think they should justify the set being worth over $300 booster box? Absolutely not. And so I think that set it's going to keep going down at some point. And then when we do eventually see the crash, which will probably happen in 2027, considering that we're getting, a new game, probably a new generation, all that. Destined Rivals feels like it's going to be like Surging Sparks. Surging Sparks came out with a ton of hype, fell down. Because again, Journey Together, everybody says Journey Together was a one-off. Oh, it just wasn't as good as people said it was. Surging Sparks apparently lived up to the hype, yet most of its cards have tanked in value. And so have a lot of products when you compare the fact that they haven't really gone up a ton. But overall, we'll see. This has been Tom Fox. Let me know down below if you agree with me about Temporal Forces and Paradox Rift being super undervalued and underrated sets, both in just straight up being underrated sets, as well as being undervalued investments. Let me know about the release date thing. Do you agree that release dates really are a bigger deal than people make them out to be and all that? And as always, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this video. Like the video as well. Do at least 1 card video a week. Again, next week, I believe is Paldean Fates. I honestly don't remember, but I have another tier list video of illustration rares coming out next Monday. So be on the lookout for that. Got the Pokemon Shield journey going on as well. And as always, guys, have a great night.